What would it feel like to spend nearly every hour of every day alone in a concrete box? No crowds, no conversation, no touch. This isn't a dystopian movie, it's real life at ADX Florence, the most secure federal prison in the United States. Today, we'll follow a single day inside its walls, using court documents, official reports, and first-hand accounts to reveal what solitary confinement here truly looks like. Opened in 1994 in the high desert of Colorado, ADX Florence was designed from the ground up to be escape-proof. According to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, it houses about 400 of the country's most high-risk inmates, people convicted of terrorism, organized crime leadership, espionage, or multiple murders. Security here is layered: reinforced concrete cells, remote-controlled steel doors, pressure pads under the floor, and razor wire perimeters. Former warden Robert Hood once called it a clean version of hell, quoted in New York Times 2007. Each inmate lives in a single cell measuring roughly 7 by 12 feet. Furnishings, bed, desk, stool, and a combined toilet/sink are molded from poured concrete to prevent weapon making. A small slit window, just 4 inches wide but angled upward to show only the sky, limits outside view and disorients any sense of place. Federal Bureau of Prisons facility specs. The design reflects lessons from violent incidents at other prisons. After the 1983 murders of 2 guards at USP Marion, officials concluded that Supermax isolation was the only way to control certain prisoners. ADX became the model. Human contact opportunities are almost eliminated, reducing the chance for assaults, but also, as critics argue, inflicting intense psychological strain. By 2012, these conditions had drawn legal scrutiny. Cunningham v. Federal Bureau of Prisons, a federal class action suit filed in Denver, alleged that ADX was violating the 8th Amendment by failing to treat seriously mentally ill prisoners, leading to self-harm and suicides. Solitary Watch, 2012. That case and its settlement would later force changes in mental health screening and care, but it also confirmed what observers had long feared. Isolation at ADX has profound human costs. In this documentary, we'll reconstruct a single 24-hour period in an ADX cell. Every step, from wake-up to the rare hour of outdoor exercise, is drawn from Bureau of Prisons policy manuals, court affidavits, and reputable journalism. Nothing here is speculative. When something is disputed, we'll note it. AM. The fluorescent lights click on automatically. At ADX Florence, inmates do not control the light switch. Illumination is scheduled from a remote system. According to Bureau of Prisons policy manuals reviewed by the Denver Post, most cells remain lit at a low level overnight for monitoring. Inmates wake up not to an alarm clock, but to the sound of steel doors clanking down the corridor as guards begin their rounds. Breakfast is served through a narrow food slot built into the solid steel cell door. Staff push a tray across without opening the door itself. The menu is standardized: cereal, powdered milk, and sometimes a piece of fruit. No communal dining hall exists here. As one former prisoner, Jack Powers, described in a sworn affidavit for Cunningham v. Federal Bureau of Prisons, "We eat every meal alone, in our cell, like we're being fed in a cage." Cells are equipped with a stainless steel sink and toilet unit, but no running hot water. Showers happen inside the cell or in a single-person shower cage, depending on unit assignment. At this hour of the day, most inmates wash up at their sink and pace the 7-foot width of the room to stretch their legs. Visual stimulation is minimal. The window slit, angled toward the sky, shows only clouds or sunlight, but no landscape or horizon. Federal design documents confirm this feature was deliberate, intended to prevent inmates from mapping the perimeter or tracking guard movements. Some prisoners cover the window with paper to sleep longer. Others stare at it for hours just to mark the passage of time. Mental health concerns begin here, in the first hours of the day. Experts testifying in Cunningham noted that extended isolation can cause sleep disruption, irritability, and cognitive decline. Several inmates reported auditory hallucinations or panic attacks after months without meaningful social interaction. Solitary Watch 2012. One Bureau of Prisons psychologist, speaking anonymously to the Marshall Project, called the morning hours the most dangerous because inmates wake into a sensory void. Guards conduct range checks every 30 minutes, looking through a small window in the cell door. Interaction is limited to brief verbal exchanges, name, inmate number, and a wellness check if required. Conversations are monitored and kept short. Even routine medical visits often occur with the prisoner restrained through the food slot before being escorted to a separate exam cage. For inmates with a security designation of control unit, which includes many of ADX's most notorious residents, even legal or mental health staff see them only behind glass partitions or in full restraints. Critics such as Amnesty International have argued that this denies prisoners a chance at genuine therapeutic contact, exacerbating the very conditions the institution is supposed to manage. By the time the breakfast tray is collected, it's only 6 a.m., but the day already feels endless. As one journalist who toured the facility under tight restrictions wrote, "Minutes stretch into hours, when there's nowhere to go." New York Times, 2007. For the men inside, this is just the start of another 23-hour day. Mid-morning, around 9 a.m., if an inmate is eligible for outdoor recreation that day, a loudspeaker announcement comes first. Guards approach the cell door, order the prisoner to kneel, and apply handcuffs and shackles through a slot before opening the door. Even for this short walk, policy requires multiple staff escorts, and sometimes a tether chain attached to a waist belt. Federal Bureau of Prisons Program Statement 5270.09. The yard at ADX is not a typical prison yard. It's a series of small, high-walled enclosures, concrete pens sometimes nicknamed dog runs by prisoners and staff. Each is about the size of a single-car garage with a grated roof open to the sky. Official facility photos show no grass, no trees, only bare concrete. Inmates exercise alone. Contact sports or group recreation is not permitted for the control unit population. The Bureau of Prisons says this design maximizes safety, but critics call it outdoor solitary. The only view outward is a patch of blue or gray sky overhead. No mountains, no desert landscape, just the weather. A 2014 inspection by the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition noted that the isolation even during recreation undermines the mental health benefits exercise is supposed to provide. In affidavits filed in Cunningham v. Federal Bureau of Prisons, several inmates described this hour as both a relief and a torment. Jack Powers wrote, "I long for this hour, yet dread it, because the cage reminds me how little freedom I have." Another plaintiff recounted developing agoraphobia so severe that he began refusing his recreation time altogether, choosing 24 hours in the cell over the jarring transition to the outdoor pen. Physical activity is limited to pacing, push-ups, sit-ups, or sometimes running in tight circles. Weather conditions are rarely a reason for cancellation. Inmates may be out in snow or blazing sun with no shelter. Guards watch from a secure position above or behind reinforced glass. All movements are logged. After 60 minutes, an announcement ends the session. The process reverses. Restraints applied, door opened, escorted back to the cell. At this point, many prisoners describe a sudden mood crash. Psychologists who visited ADX under court order testified that the lack of sensory stimulation and human contact makes the outdoor hour feel less like freedom and more like a brief, sterile simulation of it. Solitary Watch, 2012. Even so, it is the only time many inmates breathe unfiltered air. A few cling to it as a ritual of survival, memorizing cloud shapes or whispering to birds overhead. As one former warden told 60 Minutes, "This is not rehabilitation, it's containment. Every detail is about control." By late morning, the prisoner is back in the cell, restraints removed only after the door locks. The next stretch, from late morning to mid-afternoon, is a blank expanse of time, punctuated only by lunch through the slot and occasional security checks. 10 p.m. Lunch arrives. The same narrow food slot opens. A plastic tray slides in. The menu is standardized and rotated. Sandwich, processed meat, fruit cup, powdered drink mix. Prepared in a central kitchen and delivered on carts. Inmates eat alone in silence. According to Bureau of Prisons documents obtained by the Rocky Mountain News, kitchen workers never see the prisoners. Trays are passed hand to hand by officers. After lunch, nothing official happens for hours. There are no classes, no communal recreation, and no unrestrained movement. Prisoners remain locked inside their 7 by 12-foot cell. Some pace, some do push-ups, some simply lie on the concrete bed staring at the ceiling. Former Warden Robert Hood told the New York Times that the goal was to keep them occupied with nothing but their thoughts. Mail and reading material arrive sporadically. Books and magazines are censored for security reasons, then slid through the slot. A small black and white television is embedded in the wall for some inmates, playing only educational or religious programming and heavily delayed broadcasts. There is no internet access. Phone calls are limited to a few times per month and monitored. Even legal phone calls can occur only from a separate secure booth while restrained. Mental health concerns intensify in the afternoon. Court filings in Cunningham versus Federal Bureau of Prisons documented how inmates with serious mental illnesses were held under the same conditions as everyone else. Experts testified that the absence of therapy, stimulation, and social contact in these long midday hours led to self-mutilation, psychosis, and suicide attempts. One plaintiff described smearing soap on his window to block out the light because even the sun felt like too much after months of isolation. Guards perform count multiple times daily, walking past each cell, looking through the narrow window, verifying the prisoner's presence. These interactions are brief and procedural. Amnesty International, in a 2014 report, called ADX's isolation a violation of international human rights standards, precisely because of how little meaningful contact exists in stretches like this. Time stretches. Without clocks or natural views, inmates report losing track of the day. Psychologists call this temporal disorientation, a known effect of prolonged solitary confinement. In a 2015 statement to Solitary Watch, a former ADX prisoner said, "After a while, the afternoons are the worst. You know the door won't open until tomorrow, and it feels like the walls are closing in." Medical visits, if scheduled, occur under heavy restraint. An inmate is cuffed, shackled, and escorted to a small cage in the medical unit, examined through bars or a slot. Sometimes mental health staff attempt brief cell front interviews, standing at the door, asking questions through the food slot. Critics argue this is no substitute for treatment. By late afternoon, the prisoner has endured nearly 12 straight hours alone. With no work assignments or group programming, each day resembles the last, an unbroken continuum of isolation punctuated only by meals and security checks. As one Bureau of Prisons psychologist wrote in an internal memo later cited by journalists, "The cell becomes the entire world. For the men inside, the afternoon is less a time of day than a state of mind. Endless, silent, and heavy." Requoc PM. Dinner arrives the same way as the other meals, through the slot, in a plastic tray. It's usually a hot entree such as beans, pasta, or processed meat with vegetables. The prisoner eats alone. After the tray is retrieved, the cell door stays closed for the rest of the night. Inmates without televisions read or write letters until lights dim. Reading material is one of the few permitted escapes, but even this is restricted. Certain books are banned for security reasons. Phone calls are over. There are no visits at this hour. Family members who travel to Florence, Colorado, must book visits weeks in advance, and even then, most visits occur behind glass partitions with no physical contact. Mental health screenings sometimes occur at cell front in the evening, but advocates say they're cursory. In affidavits filed during Cunningham versus Federal Bureau of Prisons, prisoners described crying themselves to sleep, pacing until exhaustion, or talking to the walls just to hear a voice. A 2014 report by Solitary Watch noted that suicide attempts were more likely at night, when staff numbers are lower and sensory deprivation feels total. Lights are dimmed, but never fully off. Bureau of Prisons policy requires a low night light so staff can observe the cell. Prisoners often improvise masks or cover their heads with a blanket to block the glare. Sleep problems are widespread. Some men stay awake until dawn, only to repeat the same routine. This is what 24 hours really looks like in ADX Florence. 3 small meals in a cell, a single hour in a concrete pen, and more than 23 hours a day of isolation. The design, officials argue, protects staff and society. But critics say it strips people down to a psychological shell and, as cases like Cunningham show, raises serious constitutional and human rights questions. What you've just seen isn't fiction. It's a composite of court filings, Bureau of Prisons manuals, and first-hand accounts from the men who've lived it. ADX. Florence remains one of the most secure prisons on Earth, but also one of the most criticized for its use of extreme isolation. Understanding a single day inside its walls helps us grasp the cost of that security, not only in dollars, but in human lives and minds.